Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're really zeroing in on a pretty critical moment in Pakistan's recent history, August 5th, 2025.
Yeah, and it's not just another date. It's become this focal point for, well, huge nationwide protests. Plus, it marks 2 years since a major political event.
Exactly. So our mission today, using the source material you've given us, mostly YouTube transcripts, right, is to pull out the key bits of information.
That's the plan. We want to help you understand what's driving these protests, how the authorities are reacting, and, well, the bigger picture for Pakistan's governance and how people are feeling.
Think of it as your shortcut to getting up to speed. We've got some surprising details and context that are pretty crucial.
Okay, so with that background, let's just jump right in. How did the nation respond on August 5th? It was, well, pretty remarkable, the public turnout.
It really was. And remember, August 5th, 2025 is 2 years exactly since Imran Khan's arrest back in 2023.
Right, which itself followed that earlier arrest on May 9th, 2023. That first one sparked massive protests and then a serious crackdown on his party, the PTI.
And what's kind of striking, looking at the sources, is they mentioned PTI had this historic success in the 2024 elections, even despite all that suppression.
Which really sets the stage for August 5th, 2025. So Imran Khan, actually from jail, called for these nationwide protests. The idea was to ramp up the existing movement.
So how did it play out on the ground? Sources talk about really different dynamics depending on the region and, importantly, how the authorities reacted.
Yeah, very different responses. Let's start with Punjab. The sources describe massive public participation there.
But met with, well, really severe government crackdowns. We're talking loads of raids, arrests.
And violations of what they call chadar or chardawari, basically the sanctity of the home.
Exactly. Police apparently filing FIRs before the protest date, like an August 5th FIR filed on August 4th, making arrest lists, forcing entry into homes.
Oh.
Yeah, using hammers to break doors, ladders at night. The sources give some specific examples, like targeting the family of Javed Hashmi, a veteran politician.
And there's this really stark contrast, isn't there? The Inspector General of Punjab is apparently asking the public not to be abusive.
Right. But at the same time, police actions reportedly include dragging women. They mentioned Rihanna Dar, slapping women, kids, tearing clothes, smashing car windows. Alia Hamza's vehicle is mentioned.
It just sounds chaotic. And the FIRs themselves. Some seem, well, absurd, according to the sources, against a visually impaired person, an 82-year-old father because of his son, for releasing balloons.
PTI-branded balloons, yeah. It really highlights this disconnect the sources are pointing to between official words and ground reality.
So that's Punjab intense crackdown. But then you look at Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, or KP, and the sources say it was, well, a different story.
Less fear there, apparently. Which makes sense, maybe, because the PTI is actually in power in KP province.
Right, so you had large rallies. Aliyam in Gandapur led one in Peshawar. PTI workers reportedly blocked the Swabi interchange to a much more open display.
Okay, moving south then to Sindh. Protests popped up in big cities like Karachi, Hyderabad, Umarkot.
Yeah, and one source mentioned a kind of standoff where workers were protecting their leader, Amali Sahib, from the police.
And there was that weird incident too, right? Someone trying to infiltrate a PTI rally?
Oh yeah, masked face, PTI flag. But when PTI workers confronted him, he apparently ran straight into a police station.
Which, as the source suggests, kind of raises questions about maybe fake protesters being used to discredit things.
It certainly implies that, yeah. A tactic to muddy the waters, perhaps. Or justify actions later. It points to a level of distrust, definitely.
So, beyond those main areas, Balochistan also saw significant protests, according to the reports, roads blocked in major areas.
And then Azad Kashmir had a really interesting outcome. The sources highlight it as a success story, actually.
Oh, how so?
Well, the former PM there, Sardar Abdul Qayyum Niazi, was reportedly released purely because of public power and social media pressure.
Wow, just public pressure.
That's what the sources claim. And they draw this contrast, saying people in Azad Kashmir show more unity, they persevere, demand their rights, and it makes a difference. They apparently have cheaper electricity and flour than in Pakistan itself.
That's a fascinating comparison. And finally, Islamabad.
Reports there of groups heading towards Adiala jail, where Khan is held. Salman Akram Raja, the lawyer, and various elected members, MLAs, MPAs.
Didn't some even gather inside Parliament?
Yeah, apparently they surprised the authorities, who then locked the doors. So, protests taking different forms.
Okay, so pulling it all together, what's the initial take from the sources on August 5th overall?
Well, the consensus seems to be that the protests were successful in showing the government's claimed popularity wasn't maybe accurate, that people are breaking the idols of fear.
Sounds like the intensity was strong, people showed resilience. One source said PTI passed with first division.
Right. Though maybe not the complete surprise road blockade some hoped for. But the consistent theme, the severity of the violence against protesters, especially women and children.
Okay, so given that intense response from the public and the harsh reaction, we need to unpack the why. What are the root causes? What are the grievances fueling all this, according to the sources?
It's a long list, a whole range of deep-seated issues and serious allegations.
Right. Let's start with the political manipulation angle. The sources flat out claim Imran Khan's government was removed through a conspiracy.
Yeah, and that the public reaction to that was basically suppressed by force. They talk about the worst human rights violations, lots of tear gas used back then.
Which leads directly to the next point, imposed governance. The feeling or the allegation is that this current government, this corrupt group, was essentially imported, not chosen by the people.
Exactly. An imported government nobody wanted or voted for is the claim. And the sources say the consequences have been devastating.
Devastating how? Economically.
Big time. They claim this government has devastated the economy, made the common man's life miserable. Think high inflation, rising prices.
And they use strong language, like the country's been mortgaged to the IMF. That suggests a real loss of economic control hitting everyday people.
Absolutely. Then there's the specific targeting of leaders. Imran Khan, called the most popular leader, is facing, what, hundreds of cases?
And him and his wife are reportedly under extremely harsh imprisonment. The sources suggest this is because he could not be controlled.
And they praise him for being steadfast, refusing to make any deals. He's portrayed as defiant.
Another huge point of anger seems to be around electoral integrity, specifically the February 8th, 2024 elections.
Huge. The sources call it the worst insult to public consciousness and mandate. They claim a party that won only 17 seats was somehow brought into power.
And then gradually given a two-thirds majority.
How? Through allocating those specific seats, the reserved ones, and handing out positions, what the sources bluntly call the spoils of war. Political favors, ministries, that kind of thing.
It paints a picture of the public mandate being completely disregarded.
That's definitely the narrative. And critically, this ties into the alleged erosion of civilian rule. Sources claim the Constitution has been disfigured.
Just figured out.
They argue the establishment, and that usually means the military has effectively seized control over everything. Media, judiciary, parliament, the end of civilian supremacy.
And politicians in power actually admit this.
Some apparently proudly admit they're running a hybrid system, where they're the face, but someone else is driving. That's a direct quote from a source, basically saying they're figureheads.
Wow. Okay, what else is on this list of grievances?
Violence and terrorism. The sources cite killings by bullets May 9th, November 26th, and ongoing issues in KP and Balochistan.
In drone attacks.
They claim drone attacks haven't stopped, maybe even intensified, and that terrorism has continuously increased.
This foreign policy.
Yeah, the allegation is that Pakistan's foreign policy is now dependent on external signals. It can't, for example, independently protest against Israel or speak up for Palestinians. Major decisions made outside Pakistan is the claim.
All of this together. It sounds like a recipe for widespread disillusionment.
Exactly. The sources talk about a massive erosion of public trust in state institutions, so much so that significant numbers are leaving Pakistan.
And poverty levels.
Grim statistic mentioned, nearly half of all Pakistanis now living below the poverty line.
Okay, so we've got the protests, the crackdown, the deep grievances, but connecting all this, the sources point to something deeper structurally, this deepening influence of the military in civilian affairs.
Yes, this is where it gets really interesting structurally speaking. It seems to be about the underlying power dynamics.
What are the concrete examples the sources give?
Well, a major one is appointing retired military officers to top civilian jobs, like LT General, retired, Mohammed Saeed becoming the new chairman of WAPD, the power authority.
Replacing another retired general, right? Shahjah Ghani, who was accused of quite a lot of corruption.
Yes. $3 trillion in alleged corruption is the figure mentioned for Ghani. And Saeed, his replacement, has this extensive military background infantry, military secretary to the army chief, DG analysis at ISI, corps commander, chief of general staff, right up until retirement.
So it's not just one appointment, it's a pattern.
Apparently. One study cited claims over 450 retired or serving military officers are in positions across 169 civilian institutions.
And the sources question whether military experience focused on fighting is really relevant for running, say, the Water and Power Authority.
Exactly. The implication is that qualified civilians are being overlooked or that expertise isn't the main criteria. It raises questions about institutional competence versus perhaps control or loyalty.
But it goes beyond retired officers, doesn't it? The sources mention something about direct control over law enforcement.
Yes, and this is described as particularly dangerous and sensational. It's the appointment of a serving Major General, Noor Wali, who apparently used to be in ISI, as an additional secretary in the Ministry of Interior.
A serving major general in the Interior Ministry. What's his role supposed to be?
Handling the civil armed forces. So think Rangers, the federal constabulary.
And the interpretation of this move.
The sources see it as a way to ensure direct control and complete compliance from law enforcement, especially when dealing with political rallies or public order situations. The idea being that local police might be swayed by local politicians, but these forces wouldn't be.
So it's like having a direct military hand on the lever of internal security forces, even if they wear civilian-style uniforms.
That's how the sources from it. Placing a serving uniform right in the civilian ministry, being the right hand of the Interior Minister, Mosa Naki.
It's described almost like internal martial law.
Martial law being implemented within civilian institutions is the kind of language used. Cementing military control over other key bodies, too, like NADRA, the ID Database Authority, and the PTA, the Telecom Authority. It suggests a really significant shift in the power balance.
Okay, so if these are the internal dynamics, what about the bigger picture? How does this affect Pakistan's place in the world, its sovereignty? The sources draw contrast with India here, right?
Yes, a very sharp contrast, and it's quite revealing according to these reports.
They mention former U.S. President Trump attacking India.
Yeah, repeatedly attacking India, apparently really angry about India still buying Russian oil and trade imbalances. Trump threatening big tariff hikes on Indian goods.
Okay, so U.S. pressure. How did India respond, according to the sources?
Robustly. India's foreign ministry apparently put out a firm statement. India is independent. Russia is a trusted old ally. Buying their oil is in India's national interest and actually helps stabilize global prices.
Even though India is part of the Quad Eye with the U.S., Australia, Japan.
Exactly. They asserted their right to make their own calls. And crucially, the sources stress this response came from the civilian government's foreign ministry, not the military. The Indian army chief didn't jump in, didn't back Trump against Putin publicly.
And India pushed back on the criticism, too.
Yeah, pointing out that the EU and the U.S. themselves are still doing significant trade with Russia, buying gas and so on, basically calling out the hypocrisy.
Okay, so that's the Indian example. Now, contrast that with Pakistan's recent history, as told by the sources.
It's a stark difference. They recall the allegations surrounding Imran Khan when he was PM. He tried to buy Russian oil.
And the military establishment, specifically General Bajwa at the time, allegedly sabotaged it.
That's the claim, that Bajwa contradicted the PM's public stance of neutrality on Ukraine and fully implemented that U.S. cipher the diplomatic cable.
So the sources are essentially saying Pakistan's foreign policy today is run by external signals. Can't even protest about Israel or Palestine. Major decisions made outside Pakistan.
That's the picture painted. It starkly illustrates this perceived lack of civilian supremacy in Pakistan compared to India, where the government, at least in this instance, made independent foreign policy calls without apparent military interference.
It really highlights the different trajectories, or at least the perceived ones.
Absolutely. Oh, and one source also mentioned an exclusive about a supposed upcoming secret trip by the current army chief, Asim Munir, to the U.S., though they did add a caveat that they were still verifying that specific claim.
Interesting. Okay. Beyond those big themes, the sources also threw up some other, maybe smaller, but still unsettling details, little nuggets of information.
Yeah, a few other things worth mentioning. One was about potential information warfare.
How so?
An incident where apparently false news about an India-Pakistan Air Force clash was spread on social media.
Why? To what end?
The sources suggest it was by certain figures trying to divert attention from the August 5th protests, basically to confuse the public.
And there was a related point about military claims.
Yes, one source critically noted how some military figures have apparently taken credit for border skirmishes with inflated claims, even when Pakistan reportedly had more casualties in recent clashes. A critique of the narrative control, essentially.
Okay, what else? Allegations of political interference.
Claims that ruling party leaders, specifically Maryam Nawaz and her father Nawaz Sharif, allegedly met the head of the Crime Combating Department, the CCD,
To do what?
to, and this is the allegation, utilize police for fake police encounters against political opponents. A very serious accusation.
Definitely serious. Any other odd details?
There's that strange bit from Sukur about a tender for installing a flag on a pole.
The price tag was high.
Just under 1 crore rupees, 99.98 lakh Pakistani rupees for one flag on a pole. The source hinted it might point towards potential corruption in public spending.
Right. And finally, let's loop back to August 5th itself, but through that Kashmir angle, the irony there.
Yeah, it's quite striking. The government tried to observe the day as Kashmir Exploitation Day, in solidarity with Kashmiris over India removing Article 370.
But the kids brought to the events in Islamabad.
Reportedly had no clue about Article 370. When journalists asked them what August 5th was about, they said it was the day Imran Khan was arrested.
Wow. So even among children, Khan's arrest overshadowed the official state narrative about Kashmir.
Exactly. It highlights his continued relevance, the perceived injustice in Pakistan, and contrasts sharply, as the sources note, with the fact that protests did apparently happen relatively unimpeded in Indian-occupied Kashmir that same day.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. We've done a real deep dive here.
We have. We've looked at the August 5th protests, how widespread they were, the intense suppression. We've unpacked the deep grievances fueling that public anger, according to the sources.
We've also dug into the sources' claims about that increasing military footprint in civilian areas, civilian institutions.
And drawn that stark contrast with India regarding foreign policy independence, based on what the reports are saying.
So the sources keep mentioning this idea of people breaking the idols of fear, describing Pakistan as setting on gunpowder. It leaves you with a question, really.
Yeah, a provocative thought, perhaps for you, the listener. If this public resistance continues, this defiance against what's described as a hybrid system and this expanding military role, what are the long-term implications?
What does it mean for the future of democratic governance, for citizen power, not just in Pakistan, but maybe for the wider region too? Something to definitely keep thinking about.
Yeah.